Aapti Institute is a public research institute. We're based in India, but we are a global research organization. And we look at the intersection of tech and society. So we have two different labs or verticals of focus, the Data Economy Lab and the Digital Public Lab. So at the Digital Public Lab, we're very much invested in how the intersection or the relationship between the citizen and the state is being digitized, and how data can play an important role in shaping what may be access to services in more efficient ways, but also considering ways in which these systems can sort of relay online and offline capacities as well. So we look at different mechanisms where human architectures can be built to solve last mile access challenges and ensure that these digital services or infrastructures are also inclusive and accessible to all populations. At the Data Economy Lab, we're invested in questions of how individuals and communities can be able to leverage the value around data better. And so as policymakers start to develop responsive policies, we're looking at ways in which this data can be collected and also governed by communities at a more transparent level. So if policymakers are looking to leverage data and make sure that this data is diverse, we're looking at the different methodologies as well as structures needed for this data to be collected responsibly and safeguarded. For us to be present at the Data for Policy conference means that we can surface some of the emerging questions and also tensions that we're seeing in this space, where we're interacting with the public sector as well as civil society. And I think the biggest benefit is being able to surface what's actually happening on the ground, how people are engaging with data, what that looks like for communities and individuals. And these are perspectives that are necessary to have at conferences to really make sure that we're shaping perspectives that are inclusive and grounded. India is a broad, a country with many different complex issues it's tackling, but also diversity in terms of languages as well as different socioeconomic statuses and conditions. And I think data can really help identify and surface key areas for greater efficiency, but also surfacing the lived realities of a lot of Indians who are not able to be a part of policymaking processes. So I think it's really incumbent to see ways in which data can highlight these lived realities and include perspectives that are often marginalized from these processes. But that also requires that data is used in ways that are not extractive and the value is delivered back to the citizen. So there is a feedback loop that is generated back, especially in countries like India where we have trust deficits with institutions. I think this is an opportunity for us to consider how data can provide value in a sort of two-way street as opposed to being a one-way street. So looking at participation around the collection as well as governance of the data becomes really critical in this aspect. For the policymaking process to be inclusive, I think policymakers really need to have a pulse of what is happening on ground, and there can be new ways of consulting different citizens and involving them in diverse ways. We've seen citizen assemblies as a form of gathering citizens from a diverse subset of society, and I think it's really about opening up the conversation and also including perspectives that may not just be technologically driven. I think there's merit in considering offline systems of engagement and development and paying heed to those processes that may need to run in parallel to online systems of digitization as well. So often when we think about smart cities, policymakers fail to recognize that we're actually looking for systems that work, whether they are digital or not, becomes sort of secondary. So how do we think about what the citizens actually need, and how do policymakers open up the dialogue to include us all in the conversation?